As the geopolitical chessboard of North Africa and the Sahel undergoes a radical transformation in 2026, a diplomatic earthquake has just shaken the halls of power from Algeria to Paris. During a high-stakes address at the presidential palace, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune broke the unspoken rules of regional diplomacy, delivering a blunt message that has left European leaders in complete shock and African neighbors in a state of fury. He looked into the cameras and told the world that Africa must stop buying weapons and start buying bread. On the surface, it sounds like a plea for peace, but beneath the suit and the polished words, many see a sinister attempt to keep a new generation of African leaders under the thumb of the old guard. Good day, you're watching the Global Observer. Our lead story today examines the truth behind why the West is celebrating this statement while the rest of Africa is calling it a betrayal. And to understand why this truth has caused such a massive explosion of anger, we have to look at it. Let's look at who is actually being lectured. President Tebboune didn't aim his words at the entire continent. He aimed them directly at the AES state, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. These are three nations that have made the most dangerous choice you can make in modern politics. They have decided to defend themselves. For decades, they watched the foreign help allow terrorism to spread like a wildfire. Finally, they said no more. They stopped asking for permission and started buying the tools to protect their own soil. This choice has made certain actors very uncomfortable because the old model of regional power relied on everyone else being weak. When your neighbor buys a lock for his door, you only get worried if you were planning to go inside without asking. But here is where the story turns into a masterclass in hypocrisy. Deep telling. While President Tebboune is telling his neighbors to buy bread instead of bullets, his own map tells a completely different story. In 2025 and 2026, for instance, Algeria's defense budget skyrocketed to a staggering $21 billion. That is billions of dollars spent on high-tech S-400 missile system, advanced fighter jets, and massive military expansion. No one stood up to ask him why his people were buying missiles instead of schools. Why? Because Algeria is a sovereign nation and has the right to defend itself. So where does the audacity come from to tell Mali or Niger they don't have that same right? It is like a man with a private security team telling his neighbor to throw away his flashlight because light is too expensive. The truth is, this isn't about humanitarian concern. It is about the fear of losing control. For 40 years, Alger and Paris have relied on a power vacuum in the Sahel that they could manage. But now the AES state are equipping their armies to the teeth. Suddenly, the old pressure tactics are failing. And suddenly the drones are reclaiming territories that were lost for years. When the Algerian president speaks against those giving weapons to Africa, he is pointing a finger at partners like Russia who are selling arms without the typical political strings attached by the West. These aren't gifts, they are purchases made with African money through sovereign deals. The only reason it is being called irresponsible now, it is because the weapons are finally working. There is a ghost haunting this entire statement, and it is the ghost of colonialism. The logic Tebboune used is the same lecture we have heard from Brussels and Washington for 60 years. The logic Tebboune used is the same logic we have heard from Brussels and Washington for 60 years. And they tell us that Africa must remain underarmed and vulnerable before it is ready for development. They act as if you can build a school while it is burned down to ashes by insurgents. This logic suggests that security and development cannot happen at the same time, but history shows us that no nation has ever developed while being unable to protect its own borders. When an African leader adopts the tone of an oppressor, he fractures the brotherhood. He makes it look like Algeria sees itself as a gatekeeper for foreign interests rather than a partner in African liberation. The silence from the African Union and other regional leaders speaks volume. It is a silence born of fear and calculation. They are waiting to see which way the wind blows. But the youth of Africa are not waiting. They are watching this play out on their screens. They see who stands for autonomy and who stands for status quo. They see who's leader. They see which leaders are stuck in the 1970 mindset and which ones are ready for the future. The reality is that the villagers in northern Mali feel safer today because their army finally has the tools to fight back. The people of Burkina Faso are reclaiming their land because they choose to buy the tools of defense. It is only dangerous for those whose power depends on African weakness. Begging Africa has been torn up, and those who still try to read from it are finding themselves alone in the theater. As we move forward, the message from the Sahel is clear. A bread you cannot protect will eventually be eaten by someone else. The choice to arm is a choice to survive. We are building a community that refuses to be silenced while our stories are told by those who don't share our struggle. African sovereignty is not a luxury, it is a necessity, and we are not stopping until the truth is the only thing left standing on this continent. Stay sharp, stay sovereign, stay brave. This is the Global Observer.